sending out an SOS. Saturday on a Sportster. Here we go. Well, it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. Let me close that so we can get rid of some of that noise. Like I said earlier, this is sending out an SOS, Saturday on a Sportster. Really need it. Got so much bad news in the world today. Our country, in many places, is burning to the ground. It seems like insanity is just raging across our nation. What started off as an injustice against one man, a collective outrage, is turned into hysteria, and the mob is ruling. Don't know where we're going to go. It's hard to think about. You just want to throw everything off. Get on your bike and take off and get lost. But the whole country's gone nuts. I mean, it's just like the whole country needs to be on a 12-step program, So many people are just so full of rage, and that's not good. And they're making claims, based on the statistics doesn't back up their claims. The original rage, everybody came out and said, hey, that was wrong. But what is going on now, weeks later? The outrage has turned into rage. Madness of the mob. We have some groups that claim that they're against injustice. They've come out and declared, that they want to burn it down. They want to make everything into their image, and that's not going to work. If you want unity, then you got to let things work out properly. Now, we're a democracy, not a mobocracy, as some people are calling it. It's been over 100 years since the Bolsheviks took over control of Russia, and what they did was just go in and totally tore down everything that stood, and then rebuild everything in their name. And then it turned out that what they created was even worse than what they were fighting against. And that's my biggest fear today. And we have so many young people just don't understand. And we have so many of these older people, my generation, that keeps enabling them. They grab onto one little part of the story, one little part, one little injustice, and then they decide they want to tear everything down and ignore all that is good, all that is redeemable, and this just ain't gonna work. Anyways, sending out an SOS, Saturday on the Sportster. Well, we're continuing on down the road. It's a very hot and muggy day. Here we're coming to the end of June. Still no end in sight of the pandemic. And some places are starting to shut back down some. This is one weird year. I don't think I ever lived through a year like this. I thought it was bad when back in the 70s we had the oil crisis. That stopped us from doing a lot of things, where you were limited to how much gas you could get, which days you could get gas on. The price of gas jumped up sky high compared to what it was. And that was kind of strange time. Then I remember back in 1968, I was 13 years old. We had some political assassinations. You know, we had Robert Kennedy was assassinated while running for president. And then again, we had Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. We had a summer of riots across the country in the inner city. And Vietnam was going on. You know, we were watching our friends' older brothers going off to Southeast Asia, and the hippies were busy in the streets. We had Chicago, where the so-called police riots there, much like what's going on with this these autonomous zones and things like that. The only difference today is the police have been keeping their composure. It's the so-called protesters that are full of anger, trying to provoke the police. And that worked in 1968, because what happened in Chicago, you know, the yippies and all the hippies and the communists, the Students for a Democratic Society, all these different groups descended on the Democratic National Convention, and they were able to provoke the police into rioting. You know, Mayor Daley, a Democratic strong man of Chicago, he unleashed the police on them. You can Google it. If you look at the old film coverage of they were practicing in the park, you know, they had books and pamphlets out showing people, you know, to wear helmets and how to make makeshift weapons and things, and they practice, you know, to riot, and it's true, you know. I believe it's during that time the anarchist cookbook was out too. I used to have a copy of that when I was a young man. I don't know, when we were young, we were stupid, you know. We'd grab up on the current trends and things like that. So I remember using and reading books by the yippies, Abby Hoffman, who I happened to meet one time in Washington, D.C. back in the 80s. You know, Jerry Rubin, the Chicago's 7, 8, I don't know, the number changed from time to time, you know. But you had the Black Panther Party grouped with the yippies and Students for a Democratic Society. They were there too. And the playbook, these groups such as Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they're using the same type tactics that was used back then that their grandparents used. Yeah, their grandparents. I've seen it through the years. When I went back to college after the Army, how many young people whose children are now out on the streets protesting bought into the old hippie lifestyle. I know I used the name hippie biker, Jesus freak, but that's more tongue-in-cheek than anything else because of my age, the time I grew up, and the fact I hate getting haircuts. But really, you know, the hippie part, I don't really subscribe to the anarchy of the hippie part. But so many young people, you know, I've seen it ever since I got out in the Army in the 80s. Some of us older folks, we're still hanging on to what we thought was the good parts of that time, the music. Too many of us were into the dope, and some of us drifted off into some of the politics. I know I did. You know, I became an environmentalist, anti-nuclear energy, and because of my association in that during the 80s, all of a sudden I was being courted by all kinds of socialists and communists and other groups that tried very, very hard to totally convert me into their way of thinking. You know, I flirted with it during the mid 80s to the late 80s, but I finally rejected it, because being a Christian, there's no way I could buy into it, because they were very, you know, these groups are very anti-Christian, anti-church. They're anti-tradition. They want to throw away all tradition away, and not all tradition is bad. I can understand the part, but you know, we need to have conversion in our hearts about how we treat our fellow man. We need not to judge other people because of their race, creed, or color. And I buy into that 100%. But I do not buy into Marxism. I do not buy into communism. I can remember back in the late 80s, maybe it was around 1990, me and my wife were separated because she was off at school. We weren't separated because we're having a bad marriage, but she was doing, you know, she was taking training, and I had to stay home. And some of my old college friends talked me into going up to Rutgers University to help chaperone some young college kids to a left-wing convention or meeting or workshop. And I remember being at a party. It was shortly after the Berlin Wall fell down, which I thought was fantastic. I go, wow, freedom's coming to Eastern Europe finally, to East Germany. Maybe pretty soon, you know, the East and West Germany would be able to come back together and be a true democracy. And I mentioned how happy that I was that the wall was coming down, and it was a proof. You know, I was having a conversation with this lady that was about my age, and I was expressing how I was happy that the wall came down, and it was proof, you know, that communism was a failure, especially the communism experiment of Russia, you know. And boy, did she get angry with me, because she was a hardcore communist. And it dawned on me right there, these people aren't just environmentalists. They're not, you know, just seeking out peace. They are seeking out the violent throw of our way of life and our government. And is that, you know, I'll tell you, if you're a Christian out there and you get caught up in some of this social justice malarkey, you know, the social gospel, reject that 100%, because you can't walk side by side with those that wanted to destroy your nation. You cannot walk with those that want to destroy your faith. You cannot walk side by side with communists and Marxists, because, you know, they are atheists, pure and simple. Pure and simple. Now over here in Benton, old King Tony, Rebels Den Cycle Supply, they are having an anniversary. It's 3 years since he first opened up his shop. It started over on Military Avenue, which is before us. And I'm going to be taking a left here, and something you need to say to me, sir?
They're starting, unless you're going to be in the bike show, they're starting parking
in the back.
Right?
Okay, okay, thanks a lot. Wow, got that Cobra. Yeah, here's the parking, the CMA. Oh, we got the bike show going on here. bikes that are here so far. Yeah, a lot of black ones. Some of these bikes I've seen before. Yeah, old Softail, 2003 model. Ooh. That one's a pretty one. Sportster. Looking at the people showing up, their bikes, not bike show. A lot of nice bikes here. Oh, I like the color of that Yamaha. Huh. Davidson. A lot of noise. Really no. People have been stuck up, cooped up, all the lockdowns. So we got people here from all the way from Texas to get away from the lockdown, get away from the insanity. Yeah. There's a couple Harley-Davidsons here, one or two. Beautiful day. Saturday. Oh, this is pretty cool. I like the way that looks. Yeah, like the color. Some neat treatment for a Softail. Love looking at motorcycles. Love looking at motorcycles. A few Japanese bikes in here. Vulcan, orange Harley. Glide bike. Look at that. Look at the wheels. Look at that. It's a street glide. Street Glide Soul. Everybody likes to make their bike their own. Beautiful, beautiful day. Nice little breeze up here on top of the hill. That was humid. I hate to say this, but every time I see one of these things, I think of those big wheels. And I figure this guy's first bike was a big wheel when he was 2 or 3 years old. To each his own. Put a lot of effort making it his own. Yeah. Really nice. Yep. There's even a Sportster or two around here. I don't know where that came from. I'll put this on my side. There's bikers here. I don't trust them. Motorcycles. Oh, I like that carbon fiber treatment.
Great market, we fucking forward thinking right there.
Get a picture of our shelf.
I put it in September. encapsulated.
It's a pretty nice shovel head. Very, very clean. Came from Texas. Huh. Nice rat bike. What year is that?
Pardon?
What year is that?
95.
95? I was figured it might be a little bit earlier.
Yeah, everybody thinks that. It definitely has that look, but it's not. Yeah, it's still got suspension. It's a soft tail, so.
Well, it's obvious you ride it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes. I like it.
Right here, a little dog snot out of it.
Yeah. Cheap thrills. Real 1970s shit.
What is the technical process? Putting it on.
It's Tony's bikes. Inside the shop. Yeah, that's Tony's bobber. Maybe these are customer bikes waiting to be worked on.
This mechanic Jacob, we're gonna let him out, ladies and gentlemen. They're gonna get a few laps in, get these bikes warmed up. Hey Tony, you want some goggles? Does anybody else want to get fully out here? I got my money on you. Means anything. I got my buddy Dylan over here who's gonna work the flags. A little battle at the den. Hey, anybody else? You guys ready? 5 laps. Dylan, let them rip. Oh man, Jacob on the inside. Looks like Tony Power. Come on, you guys, get some hands together for him. Nothing like a little hooligan riding on your... Tony, what counting, Dylan? All right. Last lap. Here we go. Last lap, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, King Tony led them by. Oh, coming in to steal the win. That one goes to Jacob Overton. How about that, you guys? Oh, they want to run it back. Friendly competition. We'll finish this later on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys all for...
Well, spent a couple hours here. I'm gonna head on out and take a little loop around the event. It's pretty nice. Tony celebrating 3 years. Rebels Den Cycle Supply. Yeah.
How you doing?
Doing all right. How you doing?
Heading out already?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's hot.
You'll enjoy some riding, aren't you?
A little bit.
I hear that, brother.
But I had to come. I had to come by.
I hear that. Yeah, I seen you rolling in. I was watering the track.
Yeah.
It's gotten dusty again, but
Well, there's dust coming from the sky too.
I'm telling you, what, from Africa?
From Africa, yeah, the Sahara.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt, man.
Yeah, it's very cloudy. I believe we're getting all that dust from the Sahara. You know that won't change for bikes, don't you? That won't change for bikes. You know that, don't you? All right, here we go. Another beautiful day in the neighborhood. Back over to West Little Rock. I just had to get out of the house a little bit. I've been burying myself and hunkering down for the last couple of weeks. need to get out and ride a little bit. And it's a nice little ride to come over the hill from Little Rock. So that's what I did. Of course, I'm pretty much of a solitary person. Now I do belong to a motorcycle organization, motorcycle ministry, the Catholic Cross Bearers Motorcycle Ministry out of Cleveland, Ohio. I'm what you call a missionary down here in Arkansas. There's actually me and my wife, and then there's another couple that belong. They don't live too close. We don't actually have a chapter here. And the other couple, very seldom do we get a chance to be around them because of the work schedule of Walter. I wish we could do more things together, riding together and doing church type things together. We have been to a couple of men's conferences, well, at least one men's conference together. But and then we met up with some brothers and sisters out of Louisiana. I believe that was last year or the year before. Anyways, this is the crazy world we're living in today. 20,000 in the year 2020. Who would ever thought all the craziness that's going on in the streets? Who would ever thought we'd be hit with a pandemic? Now everything was going pretty well in this country, job-wise and things like that. And the economy was going really strong. And then the Chinese, they hit us with biological warfare, I believe. A lot of people are trying to deny or say that they didn't do it on purpose, and I'm starting to wonder, because everybody was cooped up there for weeks on end, and they're still cooped up because diagnosis of COVID-19 keep going up. And then we had that crazy cop that killed that unarmed man up in Minnesota, and then the streets went crazy. It just went crazy. Initially with protest. Of course, I don't buy into this systemic racism among the police force or our society in general. I'm not saying there isn't racism out there, but I lived through the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, and I have seen the progress that's been made in our nation for the opportunities for minorities. And where the minorities are not doing too well, they're under control by left-wing governments that, if you ask me, they try to keep the minorities down. Where usually, not all the time, but usually when there is some type of incident between the cops and a member of the minority, it usually happens in one of those places that are controlled by the Democratic Party. And I think a lot of that is that the governments in control of those areas and those states, they just try to keep everybody. They just try to keep everybody, tied to the government. With big government policies, lack of freedom. They keep restricting businesses that should be growing there. And I think it's purposeful. They always come out every election time talking about how bad things are at. Well, they are bad in those certain areas, but they try to put it onto the federal government, thinking the federal government should take control of all aspects of life. But it's in those areas where all aspects of life are already under control that are not doing so well in this country. And it just doesn't make sense that people don't recognize that problem. And I try to stay apolitical in most things, but there's certain things you just can't stay apolitical. We're having a clash of culture right now. What appeared to be peaceful protests for an injustice for an individual turned ugly awful quick. And where people were going out in the streets, you know, oppressing their opinions, they were just totally hijacked by two organizations. That's the Black Lives Matter organization, which in their own literature and their own words, you can see it in videos online, they claim to be Marxist trained. Their goal is destruction of our republic so they can bring in a government that reflects their Marxist views. And this Antifa group, which it's totally an oxymoron, because they restrict free speech by people that they oppose, and they claim it is against fascism, but there's evidence that you can find it if you look at it and you open your eyes. They even demonstrated it against people of the left, you know, the progressives. You know, their whole goal, they shout speakers down, they attack people that wear articles of clothing that don't go along with their mindset, and they just do not want the ideas to get out there, and that is a shame. It's very, very much a shame. It's been put on my heart. Like I said, for the last couple of weeks I've been sort of hunkering down at home, been spending time in reflection. I'm just going to have to start coming out and speaking against the insanity. And if I get followers, I get followers. If I don't, I don't. But we need an awakening in this country. Hippie Biker Jesus Freak, I'm praying for peace. Please join with me and react with love. Until the next time, bye-bye. GoPro, stop recording.